For more analysis on what could happen this weekend, Malcolm Riddell, president of RiddellTseng, joins us now. Sir, there is all this anticipation. The government officials have their say. The analysts have the things that they want. What do the people want?
I think the people want a fair government that gives them the opportunities to achieve a middle-class life, what Xi Jinping has called the China dream. And probably underpinning virtually everything we're hearing about is the desire on the part of Xi Jinping and the people to achieve this. Now, there's two parts to this, of course. It's what the people want, but also we have to remember the Chinese Communist Party is in the business of staying in power. And one of the ways it does that is by having a satisfied middle class.
Well, let me help you translate that. Basically, they want the people to be happy. There are two major parts of what they're going to discuss. One is going to be social, one is going to be on economy. Let me start with the social. You hinted at it. What's going to keep everybody happy?
I think there's two big issues we need to take a look at. One is the income disparity that Teresa mentioned. Right now, the Gini coefficient, which measures the difference between the wealthiest and the least well-off, is among the highest in the world. This is a challenge for the government. They have to create the kinds of opportunities to eliminate this disparity. On a closer level is real estate. We find two areas here that we need to keep an eye on. The first is, as we know, there's been a lot of demonstrations, maybe even 100, 200,000 a year in China, a lot of them over the taking of land by local officials for the use of developers. And so the land reform is going to be a key issue here to keeping the populace happy.
You're starting to sneak into the economic question I wanted to ask you, because the last...
No, but this is the thing. The social and the economic really overlap, and that's what's so interesting about this. But please go on.
It is a absolutely fascinating relationship that they have. One of my questions that's been bothering me for the last few years is China's had this amazing growth over the last decade. You and I have been watching that. And everyone says it's very hard for them to keep up this pace of 9, 10, 11% growth, and even though it's a little bit slower now. I really wonder, what does growth look like over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think the leadership has signaled pretty clearly that this year they're looking at 7.5% GDP growth, and probably they're going to, in say the next 5 years, be around 7%. Li Keqiang has said he needs 7.2% to keep enough new jobs coming out to keep people employed. And so we're sort of looking at that. And this is sort of an intentional slowdown in some ways, because the government and the leadership is using this slowdown to undertake some major reforms in the economy. And of course, that's what we're looking at with the third plenum.
I know we're being forward-looking here, but I guess to understand what might happen in the future, it's good to remind ourselves of the past. The last few years have been good on the inflationary front, but it wasn't that long ago that inflation was a major issue with the spike in food prices. We're going to get an inflation report later today, but do you think that the committee, do you think the leadership there thinks about inflation as the next big thing to worry about, or is there something else that we haven't even thought about yet in the next 5 years that's of grave concern to them?
Yeah, inflation will always be a grave concern. The Chinese Communist Party came to power in part because of rampant inflation during the earlier regime. So they're very sensitive to the impact of what can happen if inflation gets out of control. I don't think inflation is probably the key issue. I think we're probably looking at more granular issues on banking and finance that would be the things that are going to be their concern in those areas.
Very quickly, top leadership has said that there could be some very big surprises. It could be the biggest development and reforms. What do you think the big surprise is going to be from these meetings?
You know, I've heard those comments. I've also heard the pundits say that this is going to be a dud. I think they're both right. I can't imagine there's going to be major surprises, because in fact the leadership has already indicated really a lot of their major reform programs, some that would be as massive as Deng Xiaoping's. For example, they want to shift the economy to a consumer-based economy. To do that, they're going to move 250 million people from rural areas to the urban areas. And this has already been announced and in play. What I see coming, though, is going to be the aggregate of the reforms that will support this kind of policy and other major policies. And that's going, and how extensive these are going to be where the surprises will be.
All right, certainly a lot on their list to do. Thank you very much, Malcolm Riddell, live for us in Tampa.